basically, we're going to talk a little bit today about the BEAD program and the challenge timeline and any updates, and then we'll get to the demos by our vendor partner, Apptio. If you've been to any of our in-person sessions the last 3 weeks, or our online webinar that we held on Monday, this slide might look familiar. Basically, it's just talking about the timeline and status of where we're at with the BEAD funding that we're receiving from the federal government that came about from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed into law in 2021. In 2022, the Notice of Funding Opportunity was issued by the National Telecommunications Information Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce and is the federal agency that is overseeing and providing the guidance for implementing the BEAD program. The funding for BEAD is based on new maps that the FCC had to prepare, and which they did and issued at the end of May of 2023. And then at the end of June of that same year, NTIA announced how much money each state or eligible entity was receiving. As part of the BEAD process, we have to submit a few reports and a lot of compliance information. The first report was submitted by Minnesota on July 12th of 2023. That was our 5-year action plan. We were one of the first states to submit that. The timing was based on when we had signed our agreement for the funding. And then all of the states had the same deadline for submitting what are called initial proposal volume 1 and 2. And that was due by the end of December. We submitted that in the 2 volumes as required by NTIA. Our volume 1 was approved on May 29th. That approval provided us with the final information that we needed to kick off what is called the BEAD challenge process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And just for your information, our volume 2 is still under review by the NTIA. We are hearing they plan to have all of those approved by this fall. Once the volume 2 is approved, under the timelines in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, the eligible entities have 365 days to select their subgrantees and submit that back to NTIA for approval. And after the subgrantees are approved by NTIA, then we would actually begin the contracting phase of BEAD and the construction. So we're ways out from that yet. Right now we have an important piece of the BEAD process, which is basically we start with a preliminary list of locations that will be eligible for BEAD funding. And through this process, which is detailed pretty well by NTIA, and we in fact just adopted their model challenge process, we should come out of this with a final list of locations that are eligible for BEAD funding. Next slide, Anna. This is the BEAD challenge timeline that we have. We are in the week where the portal is up for you to go in and pre-register if you are an eligible challenger. And look at the maps and what the data is showing for availability. The official challenge window will open on Monday, and challenges you have 30 days to submit challenges. Don't wait until the end in case you have incomplete information. We can let you know, and you can have a chance to get all of the information in so that it is a complete challenge. Then there will be a rebuttal window period where those entities that are eligible to challenge would also be eligible to rebut. Eligible challengers and rebutters include providers, local and tribal governments, and nonprofits. Following the submission of the challenges and the rebuttals, our office will, with the assistance of our partners Apptio and Connected Nation, be going through and adjudicating to determine whether a location should or should not be eligible for BEAD funding. So again, we're in that first week period here where the portal is up, but the challenge window is not open. Next slide. All right, so we'll go over any updates that we have. Anna? If you have not been to our website recently, Anna is fast and furious preparing information to put up on the website. So we do have the recording of the July 15th information session, the virtual one and the PowerPoints, they're posted separately. They are available. We do have the file of un- and underserved locations, which is the preliminary list of BEAD eligible locations. That is available. There is information on how to use and register for the BEAD Challenge portal. Some of that material will be covered today by AppGeo. We do have an updated draft of Volume 2. It has not been approved, but our last volume that we had posted was what we had submitted on December 22nd. It has changed significantly in the back and forth, at least 10 rounds of curing with NTIA to get it into the format where it includes language that is acceptable to them. So it's a lot, I mean, it's very different from what we originally submitted. It still is in curing, so it is still a draft. And then we will be continually updating the website with information, including, like I indicated, a recording of the demo from today's office hours, and we will have an FAQ up. So if Anna is also working to get updates or e-blasts, what we call them, out every 2 weeks. So if you have not signed up for those e-blasts, you may want to if you plan to participate in the BEAD Challenge process or are interested in broadband, so that you're up to date on the most current information. Next slide. All right, so now I'll turn it over to AppGeo for them to go through some of the information on the portal and to answer questions. We will be taking notes and pulling those into an FAQ. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Priya Sankalia. I'm a senior project manager here at Sanborn, the AppGeo division of Sanborn Map Company, and we have launched the Broadband Navigator, which is the tool which you'll be using for the challenge process. And we're going to do this in 2 stages. So today we're going to talk about, and my colleague Caitlin Severy, who's sort of the guru of the application at this point, going to walk you through how, just essentially how the product works, walk you through the mapping application, and also how to register. So it's sort of like a introduction to it. And then next week, when the challenge process actually starts, that's when we'll do another training on how to submit a challenge and how to rebut challenges. So let me hand it over to Caitlin to do the demo.
Thanks, Priya. Yeah, my name is Caitlin Severy. I will be showing you around the app today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can start. So first, I just want to walk around the basic functionality of the application. So how you use it, what the features are, and then we'll dive a little bit into the registration portion of it. So let me just set up. Great. So when you open the Minnesota Broadband Map, this is what you're first going to see. You're going to see this splash screen right here. It has some good information just on the background of what served, underserved, and unserved addresses are. A little bit of information about the map itself. You can hit explore the map. If you don't want to see this again, of course, you can select do not show this again and explore the map. And now you'll see the state front and center. So here you'll see the state of Minnesota, and you'll see this purplish coloration on the back. What this is showing you is service coverage of 100/20 by county. And there's a legend on the left-hand side to guide you through what the colors themselves mean. In addition to service coverage with 100/20, there's also service coverage with 25/3 and number of providers. As you can see, the colors change depending on the theme you're selecting above, and the legend on the left-hand side will change to show the information for that theme as well. By default, we're seeing the information by county, but there are also a variety of other geographic boundaries you can select from. If you select this county dropdown, you will see the options displayed. Let's say we want to select Senate District. We can do so, and you'll see that the Senate districts will now show, and they are also being colored by service coverage with 100/20, shown with this legend on the left-hand side. In addition to the service coverage with 100/20 and the other two themes, you can see broadband digital equity indicators on the left-hand side here. By default, it's showing the information for the entire state. So right now, we can see all of the addresses in Minnesota and their coverage. We can also see their speed, subscription, income, race, and age. You can select them one at a time like we've just done, or you can select data and see them all at once in a numeric format. In addition to viewing the statewide data, you can also view it by geographic region. So right now we have it sorted by county. So if I select county, we'll see Carlton County. You'll see the total serviceable locations is updated. And then you'll also see that the broadband digital equity indicators have updated to now just display the addresses in Carlton County. It'll change for all of these options. And it will also change for the data tab. To return to a statewide view, you can select off the map and it will automatically go back to the entire state of Minnesota. There's a funding toggle equipped on the map. You can turn the funding toggle on and off by selecting here. Here you'll see the funds overlaid automatically. And then you can see information on the funds. You can see a legend for the funds on the side here. If you'd like a little bit more information about the funds, you can go to the help, select the funding layer, and you'll see more information and websites attached. In addition to information about the funding, you'll also see anything that I talked about today. So all the functions of the map, if you have any frequently asked questions, any information you're looking for on the data sources, this will all be found here. It's a very handy little tool. If you want deeper information about the data and the process itself, you can select the About, and it'll give you a bit of a background. You can turn the funding layer off by selecting again, and it will automatically disappear. You've probably noticed these donut-like representations on the map. These are address clusters. The number in the middle is the number of addresses in that cluster, and then the green, yellow, and the red is the percentage of served, underserved, and unserved addresses in that cluster. As you zoom in, the address clusters will begin to change, both in color and in composition, and in number. If we zoom all the way down, we'll be met with address points. Each point on the map is an individual VSL. They're colored the same way the clusters are. So if we zoom over here, we'll see that the green is served, red is going to be unserved, and yellow is underserved. You can filter through them if you wish by selecting here. If we want to see just unserved, for instance, we can select, and it will automatically filter out the other addresses. You can hide them, or you can view them all like we've just done by selecting all again. Zooming in isn't the only way you can view addresses. You can also use the search bar up above. Right now, we're searching by address, but you can also search by county, House district, Senate district, etc., any of those geographic boundaries that you found in this county dropdown. Well, let's go to an address. So if I search 123 East 4th Street, great. So I've searched for this address, and it automatically brings me to the address, and it gives me the information of the address on the left-hand side. Here we'll see the address itself, the city, and the zip code. We'll see whether or not it's a residential or business address, and we'll also see if it's served, underserved, or unserved with this chip right here. If served or underserved, or unserved, if it has any providers associated with it, you'll see the provider, technology, speed, and business residential. If the point is funded, you will see the information on the funding here. So this one is funded by Enhanced ACAM, and you'll see the provider for that fund listed below. For challenges, if it has been challenged, of course the challenge process hasn't started yet, so we don't have any challenges out here, but if it had been challenged, you would see a challenged chip, and then you would see information on the type of challenge, whether or not it has been rebutted, and who's being challenged. This is a screen where a person who is not an eligible entity may want to come in and take a speed test or report a service issue, potentially at their home. So if somebody who is a public user wants to come in and take a speed test or report their issue, this is how they would get there. They can simply just search their address up top like we've just done. It'll bring them to their address, And then they can either take a speed test or report a service issue. They can take a speed test, they'll select here, and it'll ask them to check all that applies. So if they're on a VPN or a mobile network, if you do select one of these, you can still take the speed test, but it just gives you a little box up here that says, hey, it works best when you're not on your VPN, when you're plugged in, and when you're not currently heavily gaming or streaming. Let's uncheck that. You can press go. It does sometimes take a couple minutes, so I'm not going to do it right now with everyone on the call. But you press go and it'll launch it up automatically. The speed test will run and it will also check for latency. At the end of the speed test, if your speeds are low enough, so if I get, let's say, a 50/10 speed, it's going to ask me to come in and fill in a little bit more information about myself, my provider, and what kind of speed I'm subscribed to. And then I can enter that. The next day, I will get an email asking me to come back for a second speed test. After that second speed test, after I take that second speed test, I'll get another email asking me to come back for a third. When all three of those are combined and their speeds are low enough, it will go in as a challenge. If the speeds are high enough, so let's say you get 1,000 over 1,000 on your speed test, you will not be asked to come back because it does look like you are served at your location. Non-users can also report a service issue, and they can do so by selecting here and selecting the service issue dropdown. So here, they'll be able to choose from availability, data cap, or business service only. Here they can select, they can fill in their information. Let's just go ahead and fill in some info. They'll fill in their information, select this box here, and then they'll be asked to add their evidence. So every user will need evidence. Every non-user, public person, will also need evidence when they submit a service issue. So if they come in and submit a service issue, they'll choose their files and they'll submit there. We will go over this more when we talk actually about the challenge process itself. This is just kind of in the intro, so don't worry if you don't understand it. It's totally fine. We're going to go back and we're going to go over this next week. So let's get to user registration. This was just kind of a general walkthrough of how the map works. In addition, I do want to show you that there's aerial imagery. That's one thing I forgot there. There's aerial imagery if you are interested that you can select by hovering over here, or you can go back to Street View like so. So if you want to register for an account, if you're zoomed into the address level, you'll see this request an account. But if you're just coming to the page, you can just select this sign in button at the top right-hand corner. Here it'll ask you to log in, but there's also this button to request a new account. So if we select request a new account, we'll be brought to this page. You'll see a little bit of information about those who can request an account. So that's going to be eligible entities, so units of local and tribal governments, nonprofits, and ISPs. Here you'll be asked to fill in your information. So you put in your name, my name is Caitlin, your email address, your phone number, and then it will bring you to this organization category. So here, if you select the organization category, you'll see a couple options. So we have unit of local and tribal government, nonprofit organization, and broadband provider. Obviously, you know which one you are a part of, so you can select which one applies to you. But there's an additional drop-down that comes up afterwards, and we'll talk about that for a sec. Let's start with broadband provider. So if you're an ISP and you come in to register for an account, you'll select broadband provider, and then you'll see this organization drop-down. If you are a broadband provider, you'll see that all of the FCC filed broadband providers will already be listed. Anybody who is currently filed and serving in Minnesota will be listed on this list here. So it's pretty important to look through the list first because these are tied back to any challenges that come in. So let's say, for instance, your Xfinity, you can select Xfinity here. Then you enter your web page and you can request. Everybody else in Xfinity will also select Xfinity from the organization dropdown, and when you all have have your accounts and you're all set up, you'll all see the same dashboard. So you can kind of see what other challenges people are submitting, what other challenges are coming in against Xfinity. Everyone will see the same thing. It's very important to select from the drop-down. But if for some reason you didn't select Xfinity, you selected other, and you typed in Xfinity, and it's probably going to tell me it's already on the list. Nope, I see something. And you type, it's telling me it's already on the list, but let's say we do Xfinity 1. If you went in and typed Xfinity 1, none of those Xfinity challenges are going to come to you because they're not tied back to Xfinity 1 as an organization or provider ID. So it's really important to just make sure you choose the organization from this list. If you truly do not see your organization, your name of your provider, you can select other and then type in like we have just done. But you'll just go ahead and request an account, say Windstream, and you'll do probably, windstream.com, and then press request. When you send that request in, the broadband office is going to receive it, and they are going to look over it and make sure everything is up to snuff, and then they are going to accept or reject it. If rejected, you will get an email letting you know that your account has been rejected. If you get accepted, you are going to get another email with a link that is going to bring you to finish your registration. So when you get that link, you'll select it, you'll go in, and then you can finish the rest of your registration. So enter your password and go ahead and register. And from there, you'll be able to log in with an account. If you're not a broadband provider, you will select another organization category. So let's say we are a nonprofit organization. So nonprofit organizations, because we can't be sure which nonprofit organizations are going to be taking part, and we don't have the information for all of them, they're not going to be pre-populated on this list here. Instead, what you'll do is you'll select other, and then let's say, we'll say Sanborn Mapping Company is my nonprofit. I'll enter my webpage and I'll request that way. When another member of your team comes in to request an account, they can now see your organization pop in here. So after I request, another person who comes in to request an account will see Sanborn Mapping Organization in this organization dropdown. They can select Sanborn Mapping Company, and then we'll see the same dashboard. So I hope this is making sense to everyone that the dashboards are really tied to the organization that you choose. And if you're all choosing the same organization, you'll all see the same thing. So it's really important, and it's also nice to be able to work as an organization, but with your own accounts. That's kind of an overview of the registration. Priya, is there anything you think that I missed that you want me to?
No, I think that's it. If anybody has any questions, happy to take them. I think, Diane, it might be helpful to just emphasize that the funding there is mostly reference. You need to actually click on the BSL to get the actual information of what funding is available at that particular BSL. So I don't know, Caitlin, if you just want to click on a location where on the map you see a fund and then click on one of those, we can just highlight that. There might be, because of the difficulty with the data, it is actually on the location which has the most accurate information. So here you'll see that it is, it has both enhanced ACAM and tribal broadband connectivity, but the layer is not showing you that because it's, because there are multiple polygons sitting on top of each other. So I just want to be really clear that it's really the location that you should be looking at for the fund.
And does anyone have any questions on the map, how it works, how to register? Caitlin and Priya, I don't know if y'all are able to see the chat, but we do have a question in the chat I'll read out really quick. Does this current mapping include all border-to-border grants to date, so rounds 1 through 9?
I guess I'll let Diane.
Yeah, this is Diane. We did provide that information to Connected Nations, so it should be reflected on there. We are continuing to go through that data. I know there were some locations missed from at least one provider. So if you as a provider are doing a comparison and you see that it's not captured, let us know or challenge the locations. So we're still working to clean up the map. I mean, and that is the purpose of the challenge process as well. And any funding from any public source, whether it's our state funding, the U.S. Department of Ag, that's all part of the deduplication process too. So we'll be capturing that as the information, is released by the funding entity, or as we get further clarification, because we are in constant communication pretty much with Treasury on capital projects. We're just, as everybody in our office knows, getting ready to submit a report to them, and that's all the locations. And we have our challenge process to our round 10. If we uphold those as credible challenges, they'll be deduplicated. We have our line extension 3 that will be released. So this isn't while the challenge process is to establish, from a preliminary set of data, a final list of eligible locations, there's always work going on to improve broadband, and to the extent it's from a public funding source, we are working to deduplicate that, because we're trying to get one good provider everywhere, not fund competition. And so it should, in short response to the question, Steve, it should include all of that. If you notice locations that are missing, let us know. We will check with the provider, and we're having, the provider should be checking too to make sure it's accurate.
I do want to mention one thing that I actually forgot to mention to everyone. When you zoom in, you'll sometimes see these little triangles on the map, and these are CAIs. So if you're looking to do CAI challenges, those will be here. If you select them, you'll see the actual CAI name here and some information about the CAI itself. So I just wanted to highlight that really quick before we wrap up. So.
Yes, and this is Diane, and if you're interested in CAIs, there was a question in the chat which I responded to. The CAIs are being handled as required by NTIA and as a third funding priority as required by NTIA. Minnesota does not anticipate having BEAD funding available for community anchor institutions. We're pretty sure all of our funding will be used to get service to and underserved broadband serviceable locations. If you are a CAI, but you're listed as a BSL, you may not want to challenge the map, because then if a project is for your area, you would get service with BEAD funding, whereas if you change from a BSL to a CAI, you could become ineligible for BEAD funding. And while a project may bring fiber on the roadway in front of your location, you would be responsible for the cost of the drop, because it wouldn't be reimbursable with BEAD funds as a third priority if we don't have funding, which we don't anticipate we will.
Nice question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think we're pointing out the same question. Go ahead, Caitlin. Thanks.
Is there an ability to bulk challenge areas for projects currently being built? So we do have the ability to do bulk challenges. They are in the form of drawing polygons on the map. We will dig a little bit more into that when we talk about the challenge process itself. But yes, there is the ability, there is a draw tool to draw around any of the points that might be in your planned service area, and then you can put them in as a planned service challenge. You're welcome. As a county consultant, can I sign up for a county with their permission? This sounds like a question for the broadband office.
If you can provide us with a letter indicating you are participating on behalf of the county. And the planned service date, June 30th of 2024. And I can tell you that we selected that because the latest NTIA would let us go out was, the latest they were letting any state go out was March of 2025. And I said, well, what if we went to December 31st of 2024, and then if the service was not built, we could put those locations back on as BEAD eligible because our challenge process would just be wrapping up at that point. And we were told, no, you cannot add locations back on to the list after the challenge process. And so we didn't really see a good reason to move the date from June 30th to December 31st, because then if it was challenged and not built, the location would still be ineligible for BEAD.
Is the unserved and underserved location list released earlier this week the final list? The answer to that is yes.
It is the final list for the challenge process. We will go through the BEAD challenge process, and after that process concludes, any credible challenge, any challenges that are adjudicated and upheld would be reflected in the list that is then sent to NTIA for approval. So it's the final list for entering the BEAD challenge process. But it's not the final list of locations that are eligible for BEAD. That's what this BEAD challenge process, the purpose of it is. And then when we have the list that comes out the other side of this process, it will go to NTIA for their approval. And then we'll have the final list, the final list.
Diane, I think the next one's for you as well.
Yes, we have, we have our BEAD allocation of just under $652 million. Of course, some of that will be used for administrative costs, but the vast majority of it will be used to fund the deployment of broadband service. We have to show, based on NTIA requirements, that we are getting something to everyone. So yes, in some areas where the cost per location exceeds what is termed the extremely high cost per location threshold, fiber may not be the solution unless the provider is willing to come in under the threshold. So we will be using some of this funding by NTIA requirements to fund fixed wireless and potentially satellite service to locations to demonstrate that we are getting something to everyone. On the next question about duplicative funding for planned service, if it's updated on the FCC map, we have the option of doing a true-up, and so we could capture the service built this construction season anyway on an updated FCC map. We can also, be in discussion with a provider that can demonstrate that they have served But again, the final list is up to NTIA, so we're not sure of what documentation they might require or even allow if there are locations built this Minnesota construction season that aren't reflected on the map. Erroneous or missing locations on the map aren't a challengeable category under the NTIA's BEAD challenge process. The best way to correct those is to work with the FCC. Wait, I think that one that just came in is probably for you about bulk challenges.
Caitlin, you want to take that one?
Sure. So bulk challenges they're not for everything. So they will be for planned service, enforceable commitment, not a part of an enforceable commitment, and then availability challenges. So availability as service is not available, or availability service is available at the location. I think that's all of them right now.
Yep.
Yeah,
you got it.
Mm. There are some file size limitations. So you can add as many files as you want. So if you put in a lot of files to send in, you can add a lot of files. It goes a little bit slower when you do so. You kind of run the risk of an like circle loading for a long time. But the files themselves are 5 megabytes or less, but you can add multiple of those files. So you can add a whole plethora of files there.
Paul, this is Diane. In your question about eligible under and unserved areas in border-to-border grants, are those that have been constructed or awarded but not constructed? And did you zoom all the way into the location rather than the polygon? Paul, did you click on the red location to see if it's funded, even though it's red?
That would just be a challenge, right, Diane?
Yes, we're asking providers to look at the challenge. We know we've got some that we're Connected Nation is trying to fix before the portal opens.
To answer your question, I guess, T. Garnica, we are encouraging you to use the draw tool, which we'll demonstrate next week, to do any bulk challenges. So the issue of a template doesn't really come up.
You cannot upload a polygon. You will be required to draw it in the portal.
I think, Stephen, any questions that you have, if you could direct them towards the broadband office, and then they can, engage with us depending on what your query is, that would be best. They will be having, right, Anna, office hours every week?
Yes, so we'll be having office hours every Thursday at 2 p.m. and we have the registration links for those. We'll explain after all the questions for FGO are done how best to follow those registration links so you're able to attend each week.
Joe, just to answer your question, the application doesn't really have a way for you to upload a list of location IDs as challenges. So we are encouraging either drawing a polygon or clicking on locations and submitting a challenge.
I see a question. What is the maximum number of challenges that can be submitted in a single upload? So for the bulk challenges, we recommend 25,000 or less. Typically, the system can sometimes handle more, but it performs the best at 25,000 or less locations.
All right, any other questions? We've scheduled this for an hour. We're coming up on about 10 minutes left in that period. Just want to remind folks, we do have the Broadband Navigator user guide posted online that might answer some of your questions. We also have information on how to register. So, go in and play around with it. And then if you do have questions, save them for office hours next week or send them to us ahead of time, and then we can ask FGO to be prepared to answer common questions. We can also include them in an FAQ with an answer. Or if we know the answer, we'll respond to your question right away. We're all learning a lot through this process. So I want to thank FGO, Caitlin, and Priya for joining us today. And they've been a great help and resource to us as we navigate the Broadband Navigator and the whole BEAD challenge process. All right. We just want to remind people, I know we've been doing this in our virtual webinars and our in-person. Anna is on board now and doing a great job of getting emails out every couple of weeks regarding everything that's going on in the office, not just on the BEAD challenge process. So to stay up to date on that, make sure you're signed up for our emails, and Anna just put in the chat how to do that. We are also been very active the last couple of weeks in adding new items to the Office of Broadband Development's web pages, especially on the BEAD challenge process. So keep an eye on the website. Try to go over that information. It's possibly your questions will be answered, or you might think of questions you didn't know you had by reading that information. Hopefully not. But anyway, we're always here to answer your questions if you do have them. We're pretty busy right now, so we would direct you to the website first to see if your questions can be answered there. It also provides a lot of comprehensive information, and so that might put your question into a context to help figure out what's going on. It is very difficult to understand the BEAD challenge process and the BEAD program, because it is very different from the prior grant programs that our office has administered. So make sure you stay on top of what's posted on the web page and read the emails as they go out. All right, Paul has a question. Can you share how end user speed tests are used for challenges since they cannot actually challenge themselves? Thank you, Paul. we have made an arrangement with Connected Nation, which is a nonprofit, to take any of the individuals' information that's coming in through a speed test, or if they post information online from, let's say, a provider that told them they cannot provide service when the map showed they could get service, or if the provider wants an excess construction charge, or if the provider has an unreasonable data cap, the end user customer or person can upload that documentation, and Connected Nation will review to make sure that it's got complete information in it. If it's a speed test, the portal will, take that first speed test and, again, we're using the NTIA's guidance. The portal will remind the person they have to take a second and then a third speed test, because NTIA's guidelines are you have to have 3 speed tests documenting the speeds in order, along with some additional information about, that you're the customer, that you attest that you're subscribing to a service that should deliver speeds at or above 100 by 20. So that's all in the portal. And so if the end user does the speed tests and provides the required information so that it's a complete, Connected Nation as a nonprofit is going to roll those up and submit as a challenge to our office. Now, if we are aware of a local government that wants to do that themselves, they can as well. So far, I haven't seen a lot of local governments register as users on the site, but they could still be thinking about doing that. But we have Connected Nation set up as a nonprofit to help with that aspect of compiling those individual user challenges. So at a minimum, if you're a local government representative and you're hearing folks say that their broadband service isn't good, and they're seeing that their location is not eligible for BEAD funding, then they should go in and do those speed tests or provide the documentation that they have. We did adopt the allowed modules from NTIA that if you're on DSL service, if you're satellite service, if you're cellular fixed wireless, that you should show as eligible for BEAD funding. You wouldn't need to do the speed tests in those instances. So, all right. Our next office hour is Thursday, July 25th. I think Caitlin and Priya gave you a little insight as to what we'll be covering next week. There will be registration links for those upcoming sessions added to the website. And we also are having another email blast to go out early next week with registration. If you have questions or concerns about the program that are not related to our office, but would be more appropriately directed to NTIA, we are posting, Tom Karst is our federal program officer, and that is his contact information. There's also a lot more information on the BEAD program posted to the NTIA's website, internetforall.gov. If you want to see how it's being administered by NTIA or the individual state plans for administering the BEAD program, it's on or linked to on that Internet for All site. And that is our office email if you have questions about the BEAD program. And that is our general telephone number where someone should answer, or you can leave a voicemail and it'll get directed to the appropriate person for a response. Okay, then
That's all we have by way of slides.
okay, all right. So I think we can wrap this up then. Look forward to seeing and hearing from you for sure next Thursday. If you have questions in between or concerns as you're navigating around the tool, let us know so that we can try and get an answer or alert AppGeo that there, there's some issues or areas that maybe that should be covered in the office hours next week. So, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.